Hello, welcome to this online presentation, Examining the Cause, an inside look at Father McGivney's path to sainthood. On behalf of the Blessed Michael McGivney Pilgrimage Center, thank you for joining this session, which is the first in a series of online programs for the benefit of those interested in Father McGivney's life and legacy. Before the presentation begins, a few notes. With his beatification, the Blessed Michael McGivney Pilgrimage Center is the new identity of the Knights of Columbus Museum. The facility remains closed during this time of concern for public health. For updates about the center and its status, its offerings, visit its website or social media channels, which are on the resource information sheet available for download with this program. At any point in the presentation, you may submit questions using the questions utility. I'll address a selection of questions to our presenter following his talk. This entire session should last about an hour. This presentation also is being recorded, and it will be available for viewing on demand from the McGivney Center's Facebook and YouTube accounts. Links to those sites are also on the resource sheet. We're delighted to welcome so many to our session tonight, and we have people joining us not only throughout the United States, but throughout the world, even as far away as the Philippines, which we know it's already tomorrow. So we're very grateful that you've risen early in which to participate in this session. Thank you. With us is Mr. Brian Caulfield, the vice postulator for the cause of Father McGivney's canonization. Brian is a New York native and a Fordham University alumnus who has given many years of service to the church in the Archdiocese of New York and in the Knights of Columbus. Brian's paths and mine have crossed consistently, and I am very fortunate to call Brian not only a colleague, but also a friend. We have distinct but complementary roles now. I seek to make Father McGivney better known, both as a historical figure, as well as someone whom we should come to know spiritually. Brian is seeking to make him a saint, or at least to shepherd the part of the process that leads to sainthood. By the nature of his role, Brian operates somewhat quietly, but very diligently. Little of his work is known publicly, at least that has been the case leading up to this most recent beatification event. He'll explain why, but he'll also pull back the veil to give some insights that may be fascinating about Father McGivney's cause. Brian, an entire month has elapsed since Father McGivney was beatified at the Cathedral of St. Joseph in Hartford. Not much has changed for you, though. Your task is only half complete. I'm certain there are many people following this session who are eager to help Father McGivney reach sainthood and also eager to learn about the process. So with that, Brian, I turn the program over to you.
Well, thank you, Peter. And as Peter mentioned, I am the vice postulator for the cause of Father McGivney. And I have a PowerPoint here, which I hope I can get to on the screen. Can you see that, Peter?
I think we're good, Brian.
All right, you can see the PowerPoint. So Father McGivney, we call the America's newest blessed, and he was beatified on October 31st, just this past October 31st, and now has the title of Blessed Michael McGivney. He's the founder of the Knights of Columbus and a parish priest, diocesan priest from the Archdiocese of Hartford. And There's a question there. Did you ever see a miracle walking? And right there we see in the picture little Michael McGivney shackle, named in honor of Father McGivney, now 5 years old. He was healed in the womb of his mother of a fatal condition of fetal hydrops after prayer, dedicated prayer to Father McGivney. And his father Daniel, okay. All right. Now, can you see my screen? I guess no one's answering, Peter.
Yeah. Yes, I can. I just lost it, Brian. There it is.
Okay, sorry. And so little Michael is bringing the relic of Father McGivney to Cardinal Tobin, who was the Pope's appointed celebrant for the beatification Mass in Hartford. And he's being shepherded by his father Daniel and his mother Michelle. And when they got news that this child may not live beyond the womb, Daniel had prayed to Father McGivney and said, if this is your miracle, I will name him after you. So his name is Michael McGivney Shackle. So now we have Blessed Michael McGivney, and that's a tapestry that was on display in the Hartford Cathedral. It was unveiled right after the reading of from the Pope's letter, apostolic letter declaring Father Michael McGivney blessed. So the question is, how did we get here? And that, of course, is a long story. I said a long time ago in the Chancery office in Hartford, Connecticut. This all started. That was in 1997. December 1997, the cause opens. Actually, the picture there is from just this past weekend, but it shows a good example of the reverence that Father McGivney has been held, especially in his hometown town of Waterbury, Connecticut. That's a statue of Father McGivney, which was erected in 1957 by the town of Waterbury. Surrounding it there are Sisters of Life, which have a close association with the Knights of Columbus. They were recently on a pilgrimage route, seeing all the sites in Connecticut that were important to Father McGivney. So the Archbishop who opened the cause was Archbishop Daniel Cronin, still living. He's 92 years old, retired. He was at the Beatification Mass, and Supreme Knight, or past Supreme Knight Virgil Decant, who passed away last year. And they were the two who kind of engineered the opening of the cause. And at that point, Father McGivney was known as a servant of God. So you see how the titles progress as we go along. And shortly after the cause was introduced, there was a possible miracle that was discovered. There was a Dominican brother who recovered from cancer. He was released from hospice. He died a few years later of something else. But when information was all gathered and sent to Rome, they decided, after a number of years of study and going back for more information, that they didn't have quite enough documentation for them to declare it a miracle at the Congregation of the Causes of Saints. So Rome rejected that in November of 2011. And, we learned an important lesson at the Father McGivney Guild, which is to get records immediately from doctors and the hospital. So when the time comes, it takes many years to finally get a cause, a possible miracle to Rome. So when they finally ask for everything, that it's right on hand. And December of 2011 is kind of when I come into the story. I have what the heck is a vice postulator, which was kind of the question that I asked myself when I was appointed. I had some idea. I knew I was involved in the cause and didn't know exactly what my role would be. But in December 2011, the Supreme Knight asked me to be, now Carl Anderson asked me to be vice postulator, and that was approved with a official letter by our full-time postulator, the main guy in Rome, Dr. Andrea Ambrosi. So this is also a story of the unintended consequences when a degree in theology actually amounts to something in the world. One of the reasons I was chosen to be a vice postulator is because I was a seminarian earlier in my life and had a master's in theology from St. Joseph's Seminary in New York, and had some idea of working with the church and within the church. I also had been a reporter for Catholic New York newspaper for many years. So what do? I work closely with the postulator in Rome. He's the one who proposes and pushes the cause forward in Rome at the Congregation for the Causes of Saints. He's handling many causes in the US these days, and many of them have been successful, such as the first beatified priest born in America. That was Father Stanley Rother, who was a martyr in Guatemala when he was on a mission there. I do a lot of the preliminary investigation of possible miracles. I was involved with the miracle that was approved of little Mikey Shackle. At first had gone down to Tennessee to visit the family and get medical records in April of 2016, just to give you an idea of how long these things take. That was April 2016. The miracle was approved by the Vatican in May of 2020. So that's a little over 4 years from the time of the first kind of interviews that I conducted, and then the actual approval. And I promote the cause through the Father McGivney Guild and the Knights of Columbus. The Guild is the official body that proposes and promotes the cause, and we have 176,000 members. And everyone listening here, if you're not a member, you can easily sign up. It's free. Just go to fathermcgivney.org, and there's a big button there that says Join the Guild. Just put in some of the information, and you'll get a regular newsletter reporting on the cause, and also, big benefit, a weekly mass will be offered for your intentions for all Guild members. And the mass is offered by the first postulator, Father Gabriel O'Donnell, a Dominican, and now he's vice postulator with myself. So just a little bit about me. There's me and my wife. She's a Filipina, so all those listening from the Philippines, mabuhay. Those are our two sons. And this picture was taken 5 years ago when Pope Francis came to Philadelphia. It's one of the few pictures we have of all four of us together. Usually my wife is behind the lens. So I thought it would be nice to have all of us there in one picture. The older boy now has a full beard, and the younger boy is much taller. He's 16 now. So I am a Catholic husband. I'm editor of Fathers for Good website. My vocation is marriage. My title is vice postulator. I'm a Catholic journalist. I have a master's in theology, and I'm a miracle hunter. So where the cause is now, we have one miracle which led to beatification. What we need is one more miracle to lead to canonization and sainthood. And that kind of will be the end of the road, not to the end of Father McGivney devotion, but kind of the end of the process that started in 1997 of having him declared a saint of the Catholic Church. Now, it may be some interesting, I mentioned one miracle, and then shortly after I became vice postulator, we were informed of another possible miracle, this one in the Philippines. And I actually met the postulator. He flew from Rome, I flew from Connecticut, and we met in Manila in order to investigate this case. Now in this picture, we see the young man in the middle there in the white shirt is Jeffrey Rentagrado, and the man on the left there in the blue is he's equivalent of a special agent from the FBI in the Philippines. He was investigating this case for us. In the background in the red Knights of Columbus shirt, that's the district deputy. And behind Jeffrey is his wife, Ginelyn, who was unfortunately a witness to this tragic. So this picture was taken a few years after the proposed miracle had happened, just shortly. Jeffrey is a fisherman up north, he fishes 12 miles off the shore, and they set up what they call habitats for fish. And the fish live there, and then they get used to being there, and then the fishermen go out, use the chain to pulley up the habitat, and then they get all the fish. And then they bring it back on shore and, of course, sell it. For some reason, Jeffrey was accused of stealing from other people's habitats. As he explains it, he's a third-generation fisherman. He knows how to do this better than most anyone in that area, so he was just catching more fish. But there was jealousy involved, and the people who were angry and jealous hired 2 gunmen, believe it or not, to go and shoot Jeffrey in his own home, right in that place where you see. And he had 11 or 13 shots, a couple of them through the neck, should have been fatal. Everyone agreed, that investigated it should be fatal. Unfortunately, it was a harder sell at the Vatican to show. We were trying to show a negative rather than a positive recovery. We were trying to show that he should have died but didn't, and that the bullet should have been, should have gone through the arteries in the neck but didn't. So anyway, let me just show you. That's Jeffrey's neck, and that string he's wearing. If you would see the whole picture, it would show his crucifix that he was given by his parish priest, and Knights of Columbus rosary, which actually the rosary was also wore around his neck. That rosary was snapped when the bullet went through his neck. He held it in his hand and prayed to Father McGivney to save him. He was only 36 years of age at the time, with 3 children, young, not young, but teenage children. And this happened right in his home where his wife was there. His 10-year-old son, John, got shot in the back. Just shows you how ruthless these gunmen were. They were not just, giving a warning. They were shooting to kill him, obviously. So that gives you an idea of, you can see kind of the stitches in there where they had to stitch up Jeffrey's neck after they took the bullets out. The doctors testified that the bullet's entry wound was right on track to go through his carotid artery. He would have bled to death, but the exit wound shows that it missed it, and there really was no explanation for that. But obviously the Vatican has very high standards for those things, and I think Father McGivney was waiting for the child Michael to be conceived, and that would be his chosen miracle. So in this picture here, some of our Filipino friends may recognize Monsignor Pepe Catorio. He helped us a lot with the investigation of the miracle. He's head of communications for the bishops in the Philippines, and he's co-chaplain for the Knights of Columbus in North Luzon. He's in Rome there. He's carrying 1,000 pages, nicely wrapped up, as I put here. We thought we had this case all wrapped up, right? So he's bringing it to the Congregation of the Saints in Rome. That was I think it was March, yes, March, right around Lent time in 2013. He delivered that, and I think it was a day or two later, Pope Francis was inaugurated as the new Holy Father. So Monsignor Catorio did his work there, and again, as I have here, big question mark. Well, not quite miracle, not yet, but of course we did not even stop one day and still invest, going forward, looking for another possible miracle. And lo and behold, there's the miracle family. There's young Mikey. I think this was 2 years ago. His dad and his mom, as his mom said, they always knew he was a miracle, even though, whatever the Vatican would say. But of course, the Vatican approved this one. The Miracle of the Blessed. This is a Shackle family from Tennessee. Michael is their 13th child, born with a fatal, or conceived with a fatal hydrops condition in the womb. The family prayed to Father McGivney and asked many, many, many others to pray to Father McGivney. The wonderful thing of modern technology and email is that part of our documentation sent to Rome to prove the intercession, that people invoked Father McGivney. They had chains and chains of emails going out from the shackles and coming back from people saying, yes, we're praying to Father McGivney. So keep that in mind. The child was healed of the hydrops in utero. It's amazing. And I think Daniel will be next week or next month will be telling his story of that. So I won't give any spoilers here, though. So Michael McGivney Shackle is now 5 years old. Also was born with Down syndrome. And, here's something I will tell. When I was down in Tennessee interviewing Daniel and Michelle, I'm trying to prepare them for, the questions that they may get from the tribunal, which was held in Nashville, their diocese. I said, well, one question is going to be, okay, the child was healed of the hydrops, but he still has Down syndrome. And they looked at one another and kind of in disbelief why I would ask that question. And they said in one voice, well, we never prayed that he would be healed from the Down syndrome. We saw that as a gift, as God's choice to give us a child of special needs and also special, be able to give special love. And they saw this as a gift to their family to teach all their other children how to love unconditionally, although no one, like the Down syndrome child, presumably, may not be able to do anything of note in the world, never become famous. Little did they know, like he's probably a famous figure, at least within the church, but to give unconditional love. And I think he has brought that to the family. So the family that prays together stays together, as we know from Father Peyton. There's the family on the back porch in their home in Dixon, Tennessee, with 13 children. You can imagine it's a large home that is welcoming, and everyone is loved, and no one is starved for attention in that family. Sometimes, they'd like to get away to a quiet moment, perhaps. So it is my firm conviction that Father McGivney chose this family and this child for this miracle. There are 5 factors why this is a particularly Knights of Columbus miracle, right? The family was offered abortion after the Down syndrome diagnosis, and again after the hydrops diagnosis. They obviously, as a Catholic Knights of Columbus family, they rejected abortion. The ultrasound was the means of diagnosis, and that highlights our ultrasound initiative, which is placed somewhat 1,300 or so ultrasound machines, life-saving machines in all 50 states and throughout Canada and other countries. The Down syndrome dignity, Knights have been involved in, the dignity of the mentally handicapped through the Tootsie Roll Drive, through Special Olympics. This miracle also highlights the domestic church, which is one of our programs, building the domestic church. This family obviously is an example of our Catholic faith at work within the family. And they named their homeschool many years ago, Father McGivney Academy. So we know Father McGivney's been working in the family for years. And our insurance protection through the Knights of Columbus. Daniel is a general agent covering all of Tennessee, parts of Kentucky, part of Virginia. So he's a busy man. He actually has I think a single prop airplane so he can get around to his territory. Sometimes he'll post pictures from airborne on Facebook and elsewhere. So I think that's why Father McGivney waited and chose that family. So the road ahead towards sainthood, right? Just a brief review. The picture at the left there is the McGivney gravesite in St. Joseph's Cemetery in Waterbury. The priest there is Father Jim Sullivan, just this past August, every August he offers Mass at the grave site, and in the site there are now the parents, Patrick and Mary, two priest brothers of Father McGivney and other siblings of Father McGivney are buried there. Father McGivney originally was buried there after his death in 1890. In 1981, his body was exhumed with the permission of the living relatives and the Vatican and the Archdiocese, and his bodily remains were moved to St. Mary's Church, where he founded the Knights of Columbus in 1882, St. Mary's in New Haven, Connecticut. So, just a brief review, the canonization cause was opened in 1997. He had the title Servant of God. After a review of his life and virtue in March of 2008, Pope Benedict XVI named him Venerable, recognizing his heroic virtue. And then in this past May 26, 2020, Pope Francis approved the first miracle of Michael McGivney Shackle. And now you come in the picture, everyone listening here, everyone watching here, how you can help to get the next miracle and to open the door for Father McGivney to be declared a saint. And that is join the Father McGivney Guild at fathermcgivney.org. You pray, especially in times of great need. We'll probably talk with Peter. I'll talk with Peter about what exactly the Vatican looks for in a possible miracle. So pray, but pray in all your needs, Father McGivney, and then report any favors, not just what you think may be miraculous, but if you go to the website, we have a big button there that says, report favors. And there's a big button that says ask for prayers, right? People asking for intercession. We get many a day, and I'm the one who kind of approves them and posts them on the website. And then we have also a button, report favors, and that's if after prayer to Father McGivney, obviously through his intercession at the throne of God, if you experience a favor, and it could be, something, getting a new job, getting a better job, finding a home, a health issue. We just recently had a COVID recovery that was reported. So all these things are all, report them, and we will, put them up on the website just to give other people the sense that, yes, your prayers, people do have their prayers answered. And I think, as Daniel Shackle says, the father of the miracle boy, he's convinced that Father McGivney is a saint for our times. He's just what we need in the church today, in our culture. He fought in anti-Catholic culture. In his day, he did it with a genius of engagement and education and keeping men close to the faith and their families close to the faith. And really the genius of Father McGivney, I think, is still relevant today. And there's his official biography, Parish Priest. Again, the Guild website, fathermcgivney.org. Parish Priest biography can be ordered, I think, on Amazon, or you can send an email to us. We have some copies in stock. Knights of Columbus website there, and then join the Guild, pray for his intercession, report all favors received. And with that, I'll hand it back to Peter Sonsky, my good friend.
Brian, thank you. Some very interesting information. I have a number of questions that I want to ask myself, but I'm struck by one thing that several people have asked me in the past and that you didn't cover, but I know that you can answer. Brian, Father McGivney was born in 1852. He was ordained in 1877. He founded the Knights of Columbus in 1882, and he died in 1890, just a very young man, only 38 years old. Why then did it take 100 plus years for the cause of Father McGivney's canonization to open? We knew he was a holy man.
Yeah, well, that's a good question. And actually, it's one that is addressed in the first, what we call the positio, the position paper, regarding Father McGivney when he was going for venerable. And that's pretty much lays out his life story and his virtues. So the explanation was that's, of course, something the Vatican would have asked, if he is so revered, if he has such a high following, among knights, why did the cause not come to us earlier? And we have to remember the time in which Father McGivney lived. I mentioned that was a very anti-Catholic time. There were notices in newspapers, for jobs where it said, Irish, meaning Catholic, need not apply. The Catholics were mainly an immigrant population at the time. Father McGivney himself, his parents had come from Ireland during the potato famine. Father McGivney was a first-generation American Catholic, and he knew the hardships of that immigrant population faced. But at that time, Catholics were trying not to stand out too much from the general population, and they were expected kind of to keep to their place. You can be Catholic within your churches, you can be Catholic, within your little ghetto neighborhoods, but don't bring your Catholicism too far into the public square, was really the message they were getting from the sort of regnant Protestant overlords, if we can use that word, really the ones who ran the culture and the society. So after Father McGivney died, and certainly there was a huge outpouring of love for him from those who knew him. His funeral was, drew about 1,000 people. That was in a small town where he died, where he was pastor in Thomaston, kind of in the hills of Connecticut, a small factory town, in fact, where Seth Thomas, the watchmaker, had his factory and gave his name to the town. So there were about 1,000 people who showed up for his funeral in Thomaston. They all couldn't get into the church. It was, not a huge church. And then they took, the coffin and put it on a train. Peter and I were just there the other day, kind of looking at some of the sites, and the train tracks are still there. The church has been moved to a different location, and the rectory is no longer there, in which Father McGivney died. But they put it on, and it was a short ride down to Waterbury. And then, they put the coffin on a coach, kind of a hearse coach. And newspaper reports, the secular newspapers reported it was the largest turnout for a funeral procession in the history of Waterbury, just going from the train station to the grave site, which, we saw earlier in my presentation there, the McGivney grave site. One paper reported that you could not rent a carriage, or a conveyance within miles of Waterbury, because they were all taken for people, wanting to follow along in this funeral procession, really for many people considered the sainted Reverend McGivney. Again, as I said, the Catholics were hesitant to do anything too Roman, let's say, because there was a belief that, Catholics called the Vatican or the Pope before they, would do anything publicly. They had to get guidance from, from the Pope on every matter, including, eating fish on Friday, and, and who they would vote for and things like that. So there was a strong feeling that a Catholic could not be a good Catholic and a good American. So that's how we explain that, his cause, although, probably the Knights had thought about it, they said, it's really probably not the time to do that, 1890, and then into the early 1900s. And then, the Knights got involved in, all the help that they were giving soldiers in the First World War. Certainly. And all the civic duties and civic really recognition that they were getting, letters from statesmen, from presidents congratulating them, from generals on the work that they did in the First World War. Probably they didn't want to kind of say, oh yes, and by the way, we're going to do this very Roman popish thing, like try to get our founder beatified or canonized, so I'm not saying, that they were shy about it, but, they were involved in very many other things worldly good things in the world. And then, of course, we get World War II, and again, the Knights are very involved in aid to the soldiers and aid, patriotism for our country. So it just so happens that in 1952, I didn't know this till I kind of years ago went through the whole history of, in our archives. Actually, there was a council in the convention of 1952, a council in Illinois, that proposed, as one of the resolutions to the convention, that Father McGivney should, lo and behold, and at long last, be proposed for sainthood. And again, that was taken under advisement, and there was actually some inquiry at the time on how this could be done. You have to understand at this time, there had never been a Catholic priest who had been proposed for sainthood, who was born in the United States, right? Up until 1908, the United States was considered missionary land by the Vatican. It's like we don't really realize that, but in the church's eyes, the universal church's eyes, the United States was just like a younger brother, a very younger brother, practically, just out of the cradle in terms of the history of the church. So the only, in 1952, I think Mother Cabrini had already, but she was born in Italy, but she had at least been beatified at that time. But there had never been a beatification on U.S. soil at that time. So honestly, I see some letters where, the Supreme Knight is asking some bishops, and the bishops are like, well, yeah, I think what you have to do is do this and do, like, no one really had any experience in handling a canonization cause. It sounds kind of silly, but, it's true. I mean, even today, there's really just a handful of US born men or women who have reached beatification even. So, so that's 1950.
Knowing the history of the United States, everything you say is very plausible. And as you mentioned shortly ago, when we visited Thomaston, Father McGivney's church at the time was on the other side of the tracks. The Catholics were not accepted as part of the main population, they were not integral in society. But over time, that evolution has taken place. And so delighted now that Father McGivney has been not only proposed for sainthood, but has achieved that first very important step of beatification. I want to remind those that are joining us that they can use the questions utilities to submit questions, and I'm beginning to see some questions come in that I'm going to pose to Brian here shortly. I also want to point out that in the handout section, there are a couple of items there that you can download. Brian has mentioned several times the Father McGivney Guild. There is a number of opportunities at the Guild to either join or to ask for prayers, to report favors, as he mentioned. There are videos that you can watch about Father McGivney's life and about the devotion that exists for Father McGivney around all the world. Jeffrey Rentagrado, the gentleman who was attacked in the Philippines, there's a video about his life. There's a video about Mikey Shackle. So plenty of things that you can use the links to learn more about Father McGivney, to become more involved in his cause for canonization. But Brian, I want to follow a little bit on what you just mentioned about the delay in time, and say that, now we may have come to a point where we're almost at the other extreme, where at the time, perhaps out of a holy reverence, we decided that we were going to delay in pursuing sainthood for Father McGivney. We could say that we've come to a climate perhaps where Catholics have almost lost a sense of what importance there is to canonization, to beatification. We're in a more secular world than we used to be. How do we as Catholics maintain this tradition and get people to be involved more earnestly in a cause for canonization?
Yes, well, of course, the Knights of Columbus is really a great organization for men and their families to stay close to their faith, to build their faith, to go on and, put their faith in action, the actual name of one of our very successful programs. And this is Father McGivney's vision. I think Peter and I, for many times we've discussed the genius of Father McGivney in empowering the laity, empowering lay people. He was the founder of this organization. He really never would have gotten off the ground without him, without his hard work and his insight and his organizational skills. But when it came time to name a supreme knight, the men he had gathered to found the organization wanted him to be the leader, and he said, no, it has to be a layman because this is a lay organization. And he really anticipated by nearly a century that central teaching of the Second Vatican Council on the universal call to holiness and the vocation of the laity, that holiness is not just for the clerics or the religious, but it's something you and I as laymen, as fathers, as family men, as men who work in the world, we are called to this holiness too, and to be really the primary witnesses of our faith in the workplace and in the culture. And it's a great insight that Father McGivney had, and I think that is what has kept the Knights of Columbus kind of vibrant throughout history, throughout its 138, 39 years, is this vision for the laity, because it's something the church really, lives, through the family and through the laity, as St. John Paul II was often said. So over the years, the way lay people, this is a priest that we're venerating, of course, that we're calling blessed, but we should recognize the fact that this was a priest who had the heart of the layman deep within him. He never looked for honors for himself. I always think it's amazing, first, that he turned down being Supreme Knight, and only, kind of out of concession was the first Supreme Secretary, just because he was, so good at keeping order and keeping books. But after 2 years, just 2 years after the Knights were launched in 1884, he wrote a letter to the Supreme Knight submitting his resignation as Supreme Secretary, saying, now the order is on a firmer footing. I can kind of step back and really do what I was ordained to do, which is be, a priest of the parish and, the chaplain for my brother Knights. And that same year, he was appointed pastor in Thomaston, 30 miles north somewhat of New Haven, where he founded the order. And I think it's amazing that he did not seek to bring, the headquarters in a sense with him. 30 miles in those days was quite a distance. It's not just a half an hour on the freeway. It was a good many hours journey by horse or horse and buggy. And so, he said, I will watch over, my brother Knights in the order as a chaplain. And he founded a council. Father McGivney founded one council, local council, that was in Thomaston, still going. So I just think it's Council 18.
Correct.
Atlantic Council 18, still going there. When we visited over the weekend, we saw the original charter. And so I think it's really Father McGivney's continuing intercession, certainly, and his example, his life and legacy, and his love for the layman and for the family that really has kept the Knights growing. And I think, today, to be involved in the church is very important, the life of the church, the life of your parish. I know these are difficult days with the COVID restrictions, but, in any way that you can, keep up the life of prayer, your domestic church at home, life of prayer, the rosary. We now have a novena to Blessed Michael McGivney, 9 days, which you can get on the website, fathermcgivney.org. There's also a litany, which you can pray in conjunction with the rosary with your family, a litany of Father McGivney. It's very beautiful. And just all these things, and keep together with your brother Knights in person or online.
You make an important point. Even though this is an official institutional church process where information is gathered, there are depositions, and there's very careful analysis of information in the determination of a miracle, it all really begins with the faithful. There is a cult, there's a following of a holy person who, by an example of living a devout life, has inspired other people, and that's where the interest bubbles up. And only after that existence of a following would a local bishop even consider introducing a cause. So back to that question before, I think it's important to realize that it starts with the faithful, and Father McGivney's cause for canonization started that way too. It started with largely his faithful knights, but today, as you pointed out at the outset of your talk, Brian, there are many, many thousands of people who have joined the McGivney Guild, knights or non-knights, and are asking Father McGivney's intercession.
Yeah, it's a very good point too about at the Father McGivney Guild, we would have nothing to work with as far as investigating miracles or looking at favors if it wasn't for the faithful who have a devotion to Father McGivney, who join the guild, who actually pray to him in times of need, and who then report. So you can have membership in the guild, you can have prayer to Father McGivney, you can have a reception of a favor, even an extraordinary favor. But if you don't do that last part, which is reported, we're not going to know about it. And
well, Brian, it's interesting you mentioned that, because one of our viewers writes that it was reported that at the time of beatification that grace is in abundance, and that quite often there's an uptick, if you will, in favors. Have you, as the vice postulator and as someone who monitors these reports, seen an increase in reported favors?
Yes, so we have a huge increase in reported favors, and some of them, you never know till you actually investigate, but some of them seem, just from the reports, like this could be pretty amazing. And I want to encourage people that this is a time of grace, as Peter said. It is a time of a great grace around a beatification, that God is looking favorably, obviously, upon his servant Michael McGivney and those who pray to him. And we received, and it's not just the large favors, but just today, I was looking at the emails, and someone who's out of work for 2 years had heard that Father McGivney might be good, intercessor in this, and now has a job, a better job than she had, when they started. And again, I want to stress too, it's not just for knights. Father McGivney is not just for knights. He's never been just for knights, right? So any lay person, even I got a call the other day. A woman says she's away from the church. I don't know how she heard of Father McGivney, but somehow she did. And someone told her, pray. And, her daughter is having a difficult pregnancy. And she had heard that the miracle of the young boy in the womb. So she's thinking, maybe Father McGivney will do the same, for my daughter, for her daughter. So I'll be bringing the relic to her and her daughter in the coming days. So it's just an amazing thing to be kind of, I never look at this as something that I'm doing. It's sort of like something that I'm privileged to carry out in the name of Father McGivney, and to be his messenger in a way, to be his courier in a way. I think was one of the saints who called himself, God's dumb ox in a way, just the donkey, not knowing which way to go and just looking for God to guide him. And the faith of the people, when I read the asking for prayers, very personal, dear Father McGivney, it's like they're writing this email to Father McGivney himself. And, I have the privilege of reading it. And, it's like the things they ask for, it's just very heartfelt, and just the love that you see. And so I encourage everyone, to pray to Father McGivney and report any favors.
Brian, that segues nicely into another question. What kind of training is involved? Is there a special school or special education that's required to be a vice postulator? And is there a lot of paperwork in this job?
Oh boy, yeah. Well, for vice postulator, as I mentioned, I had a master's degree, in theology, concentrating in dogma. I also, in seminary, I had taken 2 courses in canon law, which came in handy. The actual school for postulators is in Rome. As vice postulator, I'm not canonically the one who, can sign all these things. Only in the absence of the postulator can I. So it's really the postulator is the one who has the standing, and it's almost like being certified to argue before the Supreme Court. There are just a certain number of postulators in the church, a couple of hundred, I think, and most of them are based in Rome. And basically, they have to have a degree, a doctorate in canon law. Dr. Ambrosi happens also to have a civil law degree in Italy from Rome. So he's, doubly qualified. I'm kind of the assistant. I really don't do much without consulting with him, although, I have a lot of on-the-job training. And really, I'm kind of the initial, I get the initial reports through the guild of possible miracles and favors. And, if I think something might rise to the level of a miracle, I'll share it with Dr. Ambrosi's office and, get their opinion. And, if they think that goes forward, then I would actually contact the person who received the favor. And, if that goes well, then get the medical records and then start contacting people who also had prayed to Father McGivney to get their idea on, how it was. You have to understand, it has to be almost exclusively seeking intercession through Father McGivney. If someone close to the event, possible miracle, says, well, I also prayed to St. Anthony and, St. Peregrine, for cancer and all these other things, that might call into question the exclusive intercession of Father McGivney. So, I don't want to tell people, like, don't pray to other saints, but essentially what I tell people is don't pray to other saints. But, it's obviously there's just so much.
We know what to do and what not to do.
Right, yes. But, I put in the terms like, if you're interested in having Father McGivney, receive this miracle. But of course, if it's already a done deal, there's not much you can do. You never advise anyone, not to tell the truth, of course. Especially when you take the oath, to tell the truth, the whole truth before God. But, in the case with the shackles, we could easily prove that they invoked Father McGivney exclusively and told all their friends. And, Daniel with all his agents, throughout the state, and Michelle with all their homeschooling mothers. I mean, we have all the emails, coming back. I'm praying to Father McGivney. I'm praying to Father McGivney and no one else, that kind of thing. So, just anyone who's listening, just, be aware of that, of course. And then we get the medical records, and then, if they look favorable, I'll send them to the postulator again. And they have some doctors that they use as consultants who will look this over, who are very familiar with the high standards of the Vatican regarding a miracle. And if they say, yeah, this looks good, it looks like it might go, then it's like, okay. Then you contact the diocese where the miracle happened and inform them that they have to open up a tribunal, which is essentially a church court, to take testimony from, witnesses. And, and that in the Nashville case, it took over a year. And they interviewed the doctors also, and, the doctors don't have to say, I think it was a miracle. The doctors would need to say, for this to go forward, that I can't explain this in medical or scientific terms. I've never seen a case like this before, that healing and things of that sort. So it's a long process. It's an interesting process. I never have a dull moment of my day, I have to say.
Process.
It's a demanding process.
It's important to note that it's very thoroughly examined. These are not cases that are not without significant merit. Father McGivney has been declared by the church as blessed, meaning he's in heaven, meaning he's a powerful intercession on our behalf. But it's not without some very thorough examination that this happened, and that's the case naturally with any saint or blessed, that they have to meet these very high standards in order for the church to make this declaration, so that we can have confidence as the faithful that yes, indeed, this person is with God and is praying for us when we ask their intercession.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing the church wants is for questions to be, come later, like, was this really a miracle? Did we skirt any corners? Did blah, 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 and you don't want that. So every step along the way is well documented, is reviewed by experts in this field, and a cause never gets to the congregation without having really great merit and a good possibility of success. Now we know in Father McGivney's case there were two miracles, proposed miracles, that did not go through, and they seem like very, very strong cases, but it can be rejected on any number of grounds. Sort of like in a court, might reject it on standing. Like there's not enough evidence here. It could reject it on a technicality. I mean, the first thing you get when you bring your 1,000 pages to the congregation and they finally get to opening it, it's looked at very closely by a canon lawyer who's looking for any way, to reject it because they just have so many cases, right? And so then you get, if it passes muster there, you get what's called a certificate of juridic validity. And I've seen two of them in my day as vice postulator. And it's just such a relief when you see that, because at least you know that, I personally didn't, screw anything up as far as, crossing a T or dotting an I, or, putting pages in the right position, or, presenting things in the right way. So once you get that certificate of juridic validity, then it goes to the, medical people who look at, is this really a medical miracle? And if it goes there, then it goes to the theologians who say, was Father McGivney really invoked here?
Can I stop you, Brian? I wanted to ask about your mention of a medical miracle, because it seems that most miracles for sainthood are indeed of a medical, physical nature. It's not simply that I lost my job, I prayed to Father McGivney, and I found a new job, or I prayed for my son who had gone astray and he returned to church. It's really something that's empirical. There has to be some hard evidence, no?
Yes, and that's a good point. All those others we would call favors. Some of them moral favors, some of them, favors on, that really are very personal but can't be proved in the open forum. And I tell people, if you feel this is, truly a miracle through Father McGivney, you have every right to believe that and to think that and to say that. But we can't bring it forth to the larger church, to the public forum, in order to say this is a miracle, because it's not an objectively provable fact. That there's a connection between the prayer and getting the job. But in the cases of medical recovery, especially healing from serious illness such as cancer or eye drops, that all can be proven and related to the actual prayer. So if there's someone who's going to die, pray to Father McGivney, now they're going to live. That's a pretty provable track, because there are medical records and there are doctors who can certify that, yes, he was definitely going to die. We don't know what happened, but now he's going to live. And if you can show the interceding, we don't know what happened, is Father McGivney, God working through Father McGivney, then you can prove that case.
Well, Brian, thank you very much. I want to remind people, you alluded to it earlier, that Daniel Shackle, the father of Mikey Shackle, the young boy who was healed in the womb, will be with us in a presentation just like this on the 16th, 2 weeks from tonight. And on that handout, the sheet that has so many resources on it with the links for all of those videos that I mentioned, and for the links to joining the Guild, reporting favors, asking for prayer through the Guild, you'll find a link to be able to register for this session, this next session on the 16th of December. Brian, I think the bottom line is that the way to get Father McGivney over the finish line and to full sainthood is to pray. And there is a prescribed prayer for the canonization of Father McGivney. There's a link too, by the way, to that, as well as an actual PDF download. You can download the actual card. It's a second handout that's available to you through this program. But I'd like to close tonight's session, Brian, asking you to lead us in that official prayer for canonization. And I am going to put that on my screen, and let's invite those who are at home or wherever they're watching this to pray this prayer along with you and I, Brian, as we conclude our session. So, Brian, if you would, in the name of the Father,
in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen.
Amen.
Prayer for the canonization of Blessed Michael McGivney. God, our Father, protector of the poor and defender of the widow and orphan, you called your priest, Blessed Michael McGivney, to be an apostle of Christian family life and to lead the young to the generous service of their neighbor. Through his example, through the example of his life and virtue, may we follow your Son, Jesus Christ, more closely, fulfilling his commandment of charity and building up his body, which is the church. Let the inspiration of your servant prompt us to greater confidence in your love, so that we may continue his work of caring for the needy and the outcast. We humbly ask that you glorify Blessed Michael McGivney on earth, according to the design of your holy will. Through his intercession, grant the favor I now present. And here we make our individual request. We pray especially for everyone who has been a part of this webinar, and we pray that a miracle may soon be reported. God may perform a miracle through the intercession of Father McGivney for his canonization and for the glorification of God in the world. We pray this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Well, thank you, Brian. I'm truly grateful for your participation tonight, and pray for you in your continued work to bring Father McGivney to full sainthood. Thanks to all who've participated in tonight's session, and we invite you to join us again on December 16th. On the download sheet, you'll find ways in which you can follow up with us. You can see the video of this session. You can contact both Brian through the Father McGivney Guild or myself through the Blessed Michael McGivney Pilgrimage Center. Thank you very much, and until we visit again, good health and God's blessings.